welcome back to my studio. Today I plan on taking this painting to finish. So I'm just going to briefly tell you the plan here. So the first thing is I need to change all of these trees to birches. So I'm actually planning on this one, this one, this one, and this one is turning those all into birches. Now I know what's going to happen when I do that. It's going to cause some unity issues because all of this other stuff down here is all just in these kind of warm tones, and all of the birch trees are in these kind of cool tones. And so what do we do to kind of ameliorate that if we've got like a disruption in the unity? Well, we have to echo those influences in other places. So once I've finished all the birch trees, we'll come back. I'll show you how I do the rim lights on the birch trees, but then it will become an exercise in the final composition and in unifying all of the paintings. So stick around and we'll get to that. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the birch trees around the sun. Now, because that's much closer to the sun, they're going to be much lighter. So I've kind of mixed just lighter, more intense versions of those same colors that I had for the big birch tree. And I'm going to start with like a very intense light orange mixture right near the sun here. And then gradually move out to more of a pink tone. And again, it's the same basic principle that's at play over on this tree. It's just that because this is so much closer to the sun, these colors have to be that much lighter and more intense. So a brighter orange and brighter pink, and it gradates away almost like in a circle. And this is one area too where it may take me several goes to get this exactly the way I want. So in other words, what I mean by that is this may end up drying. I may end up letting this dry and then working over it again. Usually I work kind of alla prima, which is all in one go. But these areas around the sun are very, very important. These are the ones that ultimately determine whether I'm successful in creating that that feeling of the sun actually wanting to shine right out at you, as people often ask if I've got a flashlight behind illuminating the painting, and obviously the answer is no. But this one particular area around the sun is very, very important. If I don't get this right, then it really doesn't matter how well I do everything else, because ultimately it's that glow of the sun that's kind of the main player in this painting and in most of my work. I've done a lot of these, so I'm getting very good at suggesting that glow of the sun, but each time it's a challenge, and it's never at a point where like I feel I can just phone it in. Because every time I want this painting to be like a little bit better than the last one, which was a little bit better than the last one. And so you're always working to try to improve based on what you learned in the last painting, try and apply that through to the next one. And part of the reason why I have to go over this several times is because we're working on a fairly dark canvas, even though that's almost pure white on the birch tree there, because it's on a dark canvas, a fair bit of the dark underpainting kind of shows through so that this does not end up being like a pure white. But if I go over it again, once the paint that is here has dried, then I will be able to get it lighter and lighter until I am satisfied with it. Oops, I just painted over a tree branch. When you have two trees beside each other like this, you have to decide if this branch is going over top or not, and it is, because I like that idea of playing up the three-dimensional quality of the forest, that one branch is in front of another, so that one tree is in front of the other. And you just have to, you know, before I actually started painting this, had to get it set in my mind, this branch is also going to go over top, but nothing else is going to cut in front of these trees other than at the very bottom some of these evergreen branches. And as I move away from the sun, then the value, or how dark this tree is going to be, is going to get closer to the values over here. But right around the sun in particular, there's that halo effect. And it actually gets even more effective if the tree kind of in general comes back to the same lightness or darkness of the other birch trees in here. And if you're asking yourself how dark or how light do certain areas need to be to effectively kind of portray that glow of the sun, I can give you an exact answer, but that you have to figure out for yourself. It needs to be exactly dark enough or light enough, and that is dependent on everything else that surrounds it. I talked before about kind of the theory of relativity in painting, that every single mark that we put on the paper or on the canvas, how our eye perceives it is to a large degree dependent on what are the other things that are next to it, so that everything's kind of relative to everything else. But I can't give you a formula. It's something just, you know, you get good at it through experience and through really looking. Painting is not just about putting on canvas what you want. It's about really looking at the world and seeing how colors and values and shapes interact with each other, and then using that on the canvas. Okay, I will maybe take this piece, this tree mostly, to finish, just roughly, but then I'm going to turn the camera off and I'll finish up all the birch trees. I actually tried setting up the DSLR for a time lapse, but it just, I've mentioned before, in these smaller pieces, it just really doesn't work. I end up being in front of the painting too much, and all you get is a close-up of my head. But once I finish this birch tree, or at least the basic rough-in of it, I'll turn the camera off, but then I'm going to rough in all the birch trees, and then when we come back with all of the birch trees roughed in, then I'll talk about what the next stage is and how I do that, because basically from here on, you're just going to see me doing more of the same of this until each birch tree is complete. And each one will be slightly different in terms of the exact kind of color dominance, or how pink it is or how blue it is. And that's a good idea too. You don't want them, just like you want them all to be slightly different shapes and following slightly different directions. You also don't want them to all look exactly the same in terms of color and value. And that will happen just naturally, just as the fact that dip into slightly different versions of the colors for each painting. And then sometimes I actually do go out of my way to look, okay, this tree is going to be a little lighter or a little darker than the other trees that are in the same painting. This is also a good reason to work in a series, like when you kind of revisit a similar subject matter over and over, because you get a little bit better at the various things each time. I'm much better at painting birch trees than I was the very first time I tried to paint birch trees. And so to me, it seems, it would be a waste to kind of spend a bunch of time kind of trying to figure out how to paint a certain thing. So birch trees in particular, let's say, but then to totally go on to something different and not take advantage of that, and use what you've learned just to continually get better and better at it. Because even though I'm painting often kind of similar motifs of things that I've done before, I believe I'm getting still better and better at it. So even if I paint a scene similar to something that I did 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago, there's a really good chance I'm just going to do a much better job at it now. And that makes it worth revisiting familiar subject matter or motifs. And then you can kind of gradually add new things. But it can be really frustrating if you're just continually jumping from subject matter to subject matter to subject matter, because you're learning new things each time, but you can't build on what you just learned in the previous painting if you're just continually jumping to new things. So if you haven't already kind of experimented with working in a series of similar subject matter where you use similar techniques, and usually for me it's from photo shoots that happened at the same time or the same place. If you haven't done that, that's a good idea to try it. And that's also sometimes where style starts peeking out, because you're kind of each time getting a little better and refining different ways of suggesting different things. Each time you do it, if you get a little bit better and a little bit better at it, before you know it, that starts creeping out in terms of creating your own unique style. So anyways, that's this one kind of just basically blocked in. I'm going to turn the camera off for now, and we'll come back when all the birches are blocked in. I'll show you how I put the rim lights on, and then talk about what this piece needs to kind of bring it to finish. Okay, so I've got the birches all blocked in here, but now what I need to do, I got one thing I can do, and I just know from experience this works really, really well to make these birches pop, and that's to put a fine hairline rim light on each side. So on the side that's facing towards the sun, that'll be with a very light, warm color, almost a white, just with a little bit of yellow. And on the shadow side, it'll be a very light color that'll be mostly blue. Let me just turn this slightly. Okay. So again, a rigger brush is a brush, has long bristles that are soft, and it's very thin and tapered. And it is used for doing long, thin lines. Initially, it was used for painting the rigging in a ship. So let's see what this looks like. So I just learned this from experience, that on these birches, when the sun is behind them, putting this very thin rim light, it just really makes the birches pop and stand out. And it really just accentuates that feeling of these birches being struck by the sun. And the same sort of dynamic applies here. which is that as we get closer to being level with the sun, that's where it's the lightest and most intense, almost like a bright whitish yellow. And as we move further away from the sun, then it gets not quite as bright and starts going more into the oranges and the pinks and the peaches. Basically at the same rate as the actual birch tree itself as it moves away from the sun. So I'm just going to do this little stretch here, but hopefully you can see that on the camera, how this is really just makes it kind of pop out more and really gives that effect of being lit by the sun. And I'm going to wash out the brush and just do the opposite side of this tree as well, so that you can see kind of just in this one section here that effect. Now, if you don't have a rigger brush, you can try it with another brush, but the thing I love about a rigger is it holds a lot of paint and it can do a very long, thin line without having to continually replenish the paint in the brush. So all of this paint is still wet at this stage too, so it's still slightly mixing with the colors that are underneath, and I actually like the effect better when everything is still wet. Otherwise it can look less like a rim light and more just like an outline. So I think you get the effect. Hopefully the camera has picked that up. So we don't need to show me doing all of that for all of these trees, but I am going to go ahead and do that on all of the birches, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about what this needs to unify the painting. Okay, so I've just finished up the rim lights on all of the birches. I think you can see that really makes the birches pop. Get in here. I'm actually just going to move the camera back a little so you can see me. I think I'm going to call it here today for this video, because when I get into kind of harmonizing the rest of the painting, the colors, and unifying the colors, that's probably going to be a video in itself. And I'm actually leaving Thursday for a boys golf weekend, so I need to make a few extra videos here. So that's it for today. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. I welcome your comments and questions. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, share it with your friends. I'm Tim Packer, and I thank you for your time.